1977 NBC studio office. Michael Landon closes the door and locks it. The two executives sitting at the table look up in surprise. When Michael begins to speak, his voice is calm, but the words are a threat. Melissa Gilbert is staying on this show, and you're going to make a choice. In the next 60 seconds, a child's career, a man's test of courage, and a war against the studio system would begin. But to understand the magnitude of what Michael Landon did that day, you need to understand what was really happening behind the scenes of Little House on the Prairie. You need to understand the invisible machinery that chewed up child actors and spit them out. And you need to understand that Michael Landon wasn't just America's dad on screen. He was about to become one in real life in a way that would cost him everything. It was early spring, 1977. Little House on the Prairie was in its third season and already a cultural phenomenon. Every Monday night, 30 million Americans tuned in to watch the Ingalls family navigate life on the frontier. At the heart of the show was Laura Ingalls, played by Melissa Gilbert. She was 12 years old, and she had become one of the most recognizable faces on television. But inside NBC's Burbank headquarters, in rooms where ratings were analyzed and profit margins calculated, a different conversation was happening. A conversation Melissa knew nothing about, a conversation that would have destroyed her. The network executives had gathered for a routine programming meeting. The show's producers were there. The advertising team was there. Michael Landon, the star and creative force behind the series, was not there. And that was intentional. One of the senior vice presidents opened a folder and slid a photograph across the table. It was a publicity still of Melissa Gilbert. "She's 12 now," he said. "She's losing that little girl charm." The audience responded to her because she was cute. She's aging out of cute. Another executive nodded. The demographics show a dip in the 18 to 34 female viewership. They're not connecting with her anymore. She's in that awkward phase. The head of programming leaned back in his chair. "So what are we proposing? Recast Laura?" "Not recast. Write her out. Send her to a relative in another town. Bring in a younger sister character. Fresh face, fresh storylines. The show can survive without her." It was that simple, that cold, that brutal. In 1977, child actors had almost no protection. They had no creative control. They could be written out, recast, or fired at a moment's notice. The studios saw them as interchangeable parts. And when a child started to age, when they lost that marketable innocence, they became a liability. Melissa Gilbert had no idea that her career, her identity, her entire world was being dismantled in a conference room 20 miles away. But someone found out, and that someone was Michael Landon. Michael had a complicated relationship with the network. He was the star, the executive producer, and the creative engine of Little House. He wrote episodes. He directed episodes. He fought for storylines that mattered. And because the show was a massive success, NBC gave him a degree of autonomy that most actors never got. But that autonomy had limits, and Michael knew it. He found out about the plan to remove Melissa through a production assistant who had overheard the meeting. The assistant was young, terrified, and didn't know what to do with the information. So she went to the one person on set who she thought might care. Michael Landon. She found him in his trailer, reviewing the script for the next episode. She knocked quietly, and when he opened the door, she saw the look on her face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked. "I need to tell you something, but if they find out I told you, I'll lose my job." Michael stepped aside and let her in. She sat down and told him everything: the meeting, the demographics, the plan to write Melissa out, the timeline. They wanted her gone before the next season. Michael didn't say anything for a long time. He just sat there, staring at the floor, his jaw tight. Finally, he looked up. "Does Melissa know?" "No, They haven't told anyone yet. Michael nodded slowly. Okay, thank you for telling me. You did the right thing. After the assistant left, Michael sat alone in his trailer. He thought about Melissa. He thought about what this would do to her. She wasn't just an actress on his show. She was a kid who trusted the adults around her. She showed up every day, worked harder than anyone, and poured her heart into every scene. And now, a group of men in suits had decided she wasn't profitable enough anymore. Michael Landon had seen this before. He'd grown up in Hollywood. He'd watched the machine grind people down. He'd watched child actors disappear, their careers destroyed, their confidence shattered. He'd always told himself that if he ever had the power to change it, he would. Now he had that power, and he was going to use it. The next morning, Michael walked into NBC headquarters without an appointment. He went straight to the executive floor, past the receptionist who tried to stop him, and knocked on the door of the head of programming. "Michael, we weren't expecting you," the executive said, standing up from his desk. "I know, we need to talk. Is the VP here?" "He's in a meeting." "Get him out of the meeting. This won't take long." 20 minutes later, Michael Landon was sitting in a conference room with two of the most powerful men at NBC. They were smiling, casual, assuming this was a routine visit. Michael closed the door and locked it. The executives glanced at each other. "Melissa Gilbert," Michael said. "I heard you want her off the show." The smiles disappeared. The head of programming cleared his throat. "Michael, that's a business decision. It's not personal." "It's not personal? She's 12 years old. You're going to end her career because she's not cute enough anymore?" "It's not about cute. It's about what the audience responds to. The data shows." "I don't care about your data," Michael interrupted. "I care about that kid. And I'm telling you right now, she's not going anywhere." The VP leaned forward. "Michael, you don't get to make that call. We own the show. We make the casting decisions." Michael stared at him. "You want to make a casting decision? Fine. Here's the decision you're going to make. Melissa stays, or I walk." The room went silent. "You're not serious," the executive said. "I'm completely serious. You fire her, you lose me. No Michael Landon, no Little House on the Prairie. You want to explain to your board of directors why you canceled the #3 show on television." The VP's face flushed red. "You're under contract. You can't just walk." "Watch me. I'll breach the contract. Sue me if you want, but I'm not doing this show without Melissa Gilbert, so you have a choice to make." The head of programming stood up, his voice rising. "Michael, you're being unreasonable. This is a business. We have to make decisions based on profit." "Then make this decision," Michael said, his voice steady and cold. "You keep Melissa Gilbert, or you lose everything." For a long moment, no one spoke. The two executives looked at each other, calculating. They were thinking about the ratings, the advertising revenue, the merchandising, the millions of dollars that Little House on the Prairie generated every year. And they were thinking about Michael Landon, the face of the show, the reason people tuned in, the man who, if he walked, would take the entire empire with him. Finally, the VP exhaled. "We'll revisit the conversation." "No," Michael said. "We're not revisiting anything. Melissa stays. That's the end of it." The executive stared at him, then he nodded. "Fine. She stays." Michael stood up, unlocked the door, and walked out. He didn't tell Melissa what happened. He didn't tell anyone. He just went back to set, called her over, and said, "You're doing great, kid. Keep it up." Melissa smiled, not knowing that her entire future had just been saved by a man who refused to let the machine win. Years later, after Little House ended, Melissa Gilbert found out what Michael had done. She was in her 20s by then, and someone who had been in that meeting finally told her the story. She called Michael. She was crying. "You saved my career. You saved my life." Michael's response was simple. "You deserve to be protected. That's all." But it wasn't just about Melissa. Michael Landon's stand that day sent a message through Hollywood. It told the studios that child actors weren't disposable. It told producers that someone was watching. And it told every kid working in the industry that maybe, just maybe, there were adults who would fight for them. Michael Landon could have stayed silent. He could have let the network do what they wanted. He could have protected his own career and avoided the confrontation. But he didn't. He walked into that office, locked the door, and refused to leave until a child was safe. That's not just courage. That's character. That's the difference between being a star and being a hero. So the next time you think about Michael Landon, don't just remember the man on the prairie, teaching moral lessons in a cozy little house. Remember the man who walked into a corporate office and said, "Not on my watch." Remember the man who risked everything for a 12-year-old girl who didn't even know she needed saving. Because that's the Michael Landon story that matters. Not the one we saw on screen, but the one that happened in a locked room where a man chose principle over profit and a child over a contract.